Roses.
Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert with the TED Show after a ton of technical difficulties. Thank you, Steve. I will promote the heck out of you for coming to fix my laptop that was a white, then a blue screen for a while. I'm so excited to be back. Hope you guys had a great Labor Day weekend. We are with the one and only Kendra Davies with Stellar Life Coaching. She is here. We're going to talk about acceptance, which I just had a little temper tantrum about earlier. And so we're going to talk about acceptance. I love this topic. Of course, I always love when Kendra is on the show because she just shares some amazing insights. And I get, hey, Rose, I get so many. We were just talking about you, Rose. I get so many comments on how people's lives are being changed by Kendra. So welcome. How are you?
I am glorious, darling. Happy Tuesday that feels like Monday.
Yes, it is been a Monday, Tuesday for sure. Wow. I didn't realize it would be so crazy. So yeah, it's wild. Did you do anything fun for the long weekend?
I did. I went to the beach. I played on the beach at night, which is like my favorite thing to do. It's like my communion with God, and it was a beautiful full moon. And then I watched the sunrise, and then I had fun time with my son and friends. And, we haven't had much friend time. So we went to the pool and went swimming, and
nice.
It was
had a really relaxing, but I love it because I saw the one picture of you. I think you were doing this. I know I'm not. Oh yeah, I know I'm terrible. Oh yeah, hold on. Woo. Anyway, I tried to do it when I saw the picture. It didn't work then either. But I love it because I think the communion with God or your spirit or whatever it is just so important for us to kind of take a deep breath and slow down. And what better weekend than Labor Day weekend?
Let's do it. It was the perfect time. It was perfect. It was everything that I needed.
I'm so glad.
All right. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so we're going to talk about acceptance today. So I think it's fascinating because in my mind went to a million different open tabs on acceptance. So am I going to talk about if I'm an accepting person or what acceptance looks like? Am I not feeling accepted? And so there were many ways to go with it. And so I think it's very timely, though, because I think people do struggle with that word. They struggle with the concept, and they also struggle within their own circles for acceptance, and they don't talk about it. So enough of me. I want you to tell us about acceptance. Why did you pick this on our usual weekend ritual?
So I chose acceptance. Usually I offer you topics that are relevant to what is currently going on in my life. Yeah. Like the coach is definitely practicing what she teaches. And I think acceptance was twofold for me. It was mostly actually acceptance of other people, like when we experience rejection, when we experience the no, the pushback, when the circumstances do not go the way we want, right? Like, how do we react? What is our response? Do we accept? When is the right time to fight for what we want? And that's where my brain went. Like,
very deep. It's deep because I think acceptance brings on a lot of emotions because we as human beings, we crave, most of us, to be a part of something and accepted and feel acceptance. Not just because you're in a group doesn't mean that you're feeling that acceptance there. And so I think for a lot of people, when you say the word acceptance, they immediately go to a time when they weren't feeling accepted.
Yeah. And I think that discerning between acceptance and belonging is really different, right? Like, I can be accepted by many groups, but to feel like I belong, to feel welcome, to feel seen, heard, valued. And this is with groups, relationships, jobs, in any of these interrelational experiences. I find that being able to recognize acceptance of circumstance and then belonging with human beings is different. And for me, when I talk about acceptance, I'm talking about accepting the outside world as is. Like when I am presented with rejection, can I look at it and say, this just isn't for me, I let it go? Or do I white knuckle, grab a hold, and then push and manipulate and try to get what I want out of this thing that is not giving me what I want, right?
I think most people choose that one, right? Or maybe they don't choose it, but that's the natural reaction.
Just wait. Do you know who you're talking to here?
I'm sorry, I'm Ted Bogert. What do you mean? Yes, we get in that. We get in that headspace. And you're right. I never thought about the separation between belonging and acceptance. They really are two different things. I think they both get a rise out of you and get your emotions running one way or another, because it's just such a feeling that you get when you say those words. And I don't know. I had people tell me, gosh, I love this topic because I don't feel accepted right now. Or I love this topic because I don't feel I'm as accepting as I should be.
And what's interesting about the current times, like I have a lot of clients who are parents right now talking about the decisions that they're making for their children, and then having to accept that other people choose differently, that other people perceive the potential dangers and threats of the current circumstances in a different way. And we all have to figure out how to navigate this path. And I think part of acceptance is recognizing that people aren't going to like you, that people aren't going to agree with you, and that doesn't change your value. That doesn't change. It doesn't change the facts that there can be two truths, right? Like I can have my truth and you can have your truth, and we can look at the same exact picture and see different things and interpret different things from the same words. And I think that the acceptance comes in when we learn to see those two truths.
I agree. I love that. I think people, when I think of what you just said about, I want people to like me, and then what am I going to do with it? How am I going to handle it? Because you're right. Our natural reaction, I feel like mine anyway, is that I'm like, what do you mean you don't see it that way? Or what do you mean you don't accept me? And so I think that's why social media is powerful and yet can be very divisive, 100%. Because you have everybody expressing their stuff and then they can't believe nobody's believing exactly what they say.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think that for me, how do I say this? At the end of the day, for me, acceptance is really about looking at the world exactly as it is and then accepting that it is, not agreeing with it, recognizing that by accepting the circumstances, I'm not saying that something is right or wrong. I'm not agreeing that it must be a certain way. I'm not saying that somebody didn't do wrong. Like I'm not complying. I am accepting that this is the current circumstance, because for me, my misery in life comes from resistance, right? If you think of polarity, right? We have resistance and we have acceptance. When I'm in resistance, I am miserable, like miserable. That is when I'm white knuckling it. That is when I'm manipulating. That's when I'm outside of my values. I'm saying I absolutely cannot accept this reality, when in fact, not accepting it doesn't change that it is.
Correct.
You accept what is because it is. And then you can decide for yourself what your truth is. You cannot change the reality of what is.
I love that we're taking a deep dive, because when I hear one thing you just said, I have to accept it. When you make that kind of statement, the first thing I think of is I'm giving up. I'm giving in. I'm saying that they're right. And that's not at all what you're saying.
No. Accepting what is, it means that I can actually, once I accept it and I'm not in resistance, then I can actually change the way I feel about it, my perceptions, my reality, my truth, right? So usually when I'm in resistance, it's because I feel like you're acting against me. I create the story in my head that says, obviously, Ted said this because Ted doesn't like me. Or,
Correct.
this person didn't call me when they said they would, and that means that they don't love me. Like I'll create the story in the narrative. But it's only a resistance to what is. They didn't call me when they said they would. That violates me. That's a boundary within myself that I have to tend to. The reality is that they didn't do it. So the actual inspiration for the topic came from the idea of like, can we cut toxic people from our lives? Right?
Oh, one of my favorite discussions.
But the first step in that is being able to accept that somebody is toxic, because toxic people can be people you love. I'm not talking about your Facebook friend from high school who's annoying you with their posts, right? Like, I'm talking about when you love human beings and they show you who they are, can you accept that that is the truth? Even when you see potential in them, even when you think that they're great people underneath it, but their behavior is doing something else, right?
Yes.
At what point do you accept that people are who they are? They've told you who they are. You don't feel good about it. And it's time for you to behave differently, for you to decide what is right for you and to make your move, right?
I think that's so critical, because I think people don't know how to make that move. I think that they also feel like they failed if they judge somebody, or in their minds, I'm talking from my own perspective.
Yeah.
If I feel like I gave somebody an opportunity and they proved me wrong, then I've done something wrong. And so I don't want to accept it. Maybe I need to do something different. Maybe I need to treat them different. Maybe I need to meet them halfway. One of the things I hate most, I hate that whole verbiage. Meet them halfway. Meet them halfway at what? How much are you giving up to get there? And what kind of grief are you causing? So I think acceptance really does screw with people's brains, because we don't know how to process it.
And I really think it just comes down to, like, in this moment, can I look at this situation and say, these are the observable facts. I had this expectation. This was the thing that actually happened, right? There's expectation and reality. Can I accept the reality and stop living in my expectation, right? Because the reality is what is. The reality is what actually happened versus my expectation of what I hoped for, what I wanted, what I thought it should be, where I think I should be in my life, what I thought you should do, or what I thought you should believe. Like, can I accept the reality of what is? And that, my friends, like, if you were to be like, Kendra, what's one thing that will change anybody's life? Learn to accept what is.
And stop with your own narrative. I think that causes people more grief. We have friends, I have a lot of friends who will create this narrative in their head based on something they saw or think they heard, or some sort of impression they have. And when they finally come to me or talk to me about the narrative, I'm like, that is the complete opposite of what happened. You have just tortured yourself for a month, a week, however long it's been, over something that literally, that is not what the reality was at all. But for them, it was easy to accept their narrative than to accept what is.
Yeah. And that's what I think is key. If I can accept the reality of what is, then that means that I accept that my brain makes up stories to make sense of things, right? When things happen that I don't like, that make me feel uncomfortable, I experience this sensation, this disappointment, this anger, this thing in me. If I can learn to see that, not as I need to change the external, but I need to go inward and say, why does it bother me when somebody doesn't call me? Right. Why does it bother me that this person didn't see the value and the opportunity I was offering them, right? Why are they not putting in the work? Why are they not doing this thing the way that I think that they should, right? Like, why does it bother me so much when I go there? I think a really easy way to see it is when we talk about our children, right? When our children grow up and then we start giving a shit what other people think about our kids, right? Because we think it reflects on us. So like, your kid didn't grow up to be a doctor like you thought they should, right? But all their friends did. And so now you're self-conscious because your child doesn't represent the version of yourself that you thought you were. It's accepting the reality of what is recognizing that it was a fucking illusion the whole time.
A total illusion.
Your kid is their own person from the moment that they were born, right?
Yeah.
And who they are and what they do is theirs with their adult life. You know what I mean?
Yes. And I think
So,
people's friends talking about kids, one of the things that drives me crazy, I'm sure I've been guilty of it, so I'm not blaming anyone or trying to point the finger, but people don't like, they still keep that narrative of what they want their kids to be or how they think their kids are. And we all know they're not that way. And I mean, I don't know how you don't know they're not that way. And yet you will still go with the narrative and you can't understand why things are happening to them in a certain way because it doesn't fit your narrative or they haven't achieved the goals that you want. And so it's a very interesting cycle when you talk about that narrative being so powerful. And I think people don't realize that your created narrative, the thing that you tell yourself in the shower, the 85 different arguments you have in the shower with no one about something that may or may not have happened. I mean, that narrative screws people up so much.
yeah. Yeah. And I think if you wanted like red flags, like how do I know I'm not in acceptance? Like how do I know that I'm resisting? I think one of the ones that you just described is for me, it's when I'm rehearsing my argument, right?
Yes.
Like I'm planning my rebuttal. Like I know eventually you're going to text me and tell me you're sorry that you didn't call or you didn't see my text and blah, blah, blah. Like I know eventually it's going to happen. And then I have my text response pre-written.
Absolutely. And I've thought it out and argued with you 25 times in my head.
Like I have
it's insane what we torture ourselves with.
Yeah.
Over that.
We're nuts. But when we do that, where are we? Because acceptance is present tense. It's now. Right? Resistance is then and then. Like when it happens or when it did happen before. Right? That's when our resistance comes in. Acceptance can only be done in this moment. That's it. That's it. So when I'm planning my responses, when I'm ruminating over the past, I'm in resistance. I am contemplating the ways it could have been. It should have been, not the way it is.
Yes. And I think that's powerful because I think that people don't want to hear it is what it is or that it is because it doesn't fit what their ultimate narrative goal is.
Yeah.
And the one that they've been carrying around or the one that they just created. I'm guilty of this, guy, so I'm not saying that you are. Literally, I've had a narrative with certain people that I haven't seen in a while that I would love to have a conversation with that probably hasn't even dawned on them. And I'm carrying around this idiotic, stupid thing, a narrative that doesn't belong anywhere. Mm-hmm. And yet I am going to hold on to that sucker until I have that moment in time where I get to say what I practiced forever. Ridiculous.
Or if we wanted to practice being a little bit more enlightened, right?
Yes, we need to practice. I need to practice.
One of the things that I do that I also practice and like teach is asking for clarity, So when you said this, what I heard was this. Is that true? Right? Like I had a client once who thought that one of her coworkers didn't like her. Yeah. And she was like a supervisor and she thought she was doing well with this person, but like she noticed that she would come in the mornings and say good morning and like this coworker wouldn't acknowledge her. And so she comes to me and she's talking to me about this challenge. And I'm just like, have you ever just like asked her, like, hey, I feel like there's a bit of distance here, like I feel like you're not responsive when I say good morning. And I feel like you don't get back to me in a timely manner. Like, did I do something? Is something wrong? Right? Like, did I miss something?
Yes.
And so when she finally did it, it took her 3 months before she did it. When she finally did it, she caught it in the moment. She said good morning, and like the coworker was like waving her off. And so she paused. She went back to the desk. She waited until she had eye contact, and she said, "Hey, Susan, I'm feeling like when I say good morning to you, I'm not getting, I'm really not getting a solid response. And, I sent this email and I don't feel like I got a solid response. Did I do something? Like, are you upset with me?" And this lady was upset because she didn't get invited to a luncheon.
Oh, so she had something.
Yeah.
It wasn't made up.
No.
Okay, but she
She had,
asked
she had
her.
a thing.
Good.
But like this person wasn't going to come to her. So she ruminated for 3 months about how this person doesn't like her. It is a challenging person. And like, we're talking about performance improvement plans and how we're going to have to write her up. And I was like, can you just ask the question, right? Yeah. Can you take the story out of your head, pause it, accept what is, accept that this is real, this is happening, and then ask the questions on if the story you're making up is true, right? Because most of the time people are going to tell you, no, it wasn't that. Or they're going to say, yes, I am upset. You know, like you had this luncheon, you didn't invite me. I was the only one left here. And it was a total mistake. It was like an oversight. You know what I mean? It was something so simple that took 3 months to resolve.
They were both carrying that, who knows for how long.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. I think people don't realize that when you carry that stuff, believe it or not, I truly believe that when you address it like she did, it might sting. I don't think it's not you're in a place of fear. You don't know how the reaction is going to be. But almost always it at least gives you some sort of clarity.
Yeah.
I don't want to walk around with that crazy argument in my head all the time, or wondering why Kendra doesn't say hi back to me, or why I wasn't invited to the luncheon. Little things like that. Why don't people just ask? Look, I'm saying it, not judging. Just saying, we should all do better at asking.
But this is simple, you know, so how do I know that I'm in resistance? I'm rehearsing my responses. I'm obsessed about the past. I'm ruminating. I'm projecting into the future and about how I'm going to respond. This is resistance. How do I resolve it? One, fire yourself from your story. Like my knee-jerk reaction, the first thought that I have is that you hate me. You know what I mean? Like my brain goes from you love me, we have an excellent relationship. You text me that you need to reschedule this meeting, and my brain says it's because he hates you. It's
I understand
because you're a fraud and he's figured you out. That's what it is, right?
Nice.
It's technical difficulties, right? So I fire the first thought. I fire that first voice that does that, because she's usually wrong. Right? She's going to pick the worst case scenario of my lowest frequency of vibration is going to create this story. So I fire that and I ask myself, what don't I know? What don't I know? Is there something here that I could be missing? Just like when I'm looking at it, is there something else that I could be missing? Is it possible that I did actually do something that upset this person? Is it possible, was there ever an opportunity where I could possibly have violated a boundary or said something harsh, right, without thinking about it? Is it possible? And when I ask myself these questions and there's a yes, then I can ask a clarifying question. I can say, hey, I really value our relationship. I feel disconnected. You know, did I say something? Did I do something? Is something happening? Like, it matters to me. I want to find resolution. Are you up for that? Are you interested in reconnecting?
Yes.
And if the answer is yes, here we go.
And then on the flip side, I think people, when you were saying that, one of the first things that came to my mind is the people that make excuses for everyone. So everything is accepted as their fault, and they find ways to blame themselves, and then they continue to allow that behavior to go on because it is never something that the other person did. It's something that they did, and so they search. I'm thinking immediately. I went to the abuse victims that I know, especially domestic abuse, and so I think of the rhetoric in their head, the narrative. Oh, I can do this. It's going to make it better. Or I need to do this. I know it's something I did to cause that. And so you really do have to figure out that fine, healthy line of where you're at. I'm not saying it's easy, but there are people I know, it's always their fault and they're always apologizing.
And so, like, we're talking about two different things here, right?
Yes, we are.
I think that acceptance is still a piece of that, and firing that first voice is so critical.
Love the firing.
Right?
So
Like,
good.
just fire that knee-jerk reaction, that thing that says, I'm wrong, I did something wrong. Like, we can just ask ourselves, what don't I know? Is there something else? Is there another potential explanation other than Ted hates me?
Right.
And I'm a fraud, and I shouldn't be a life coach, and I should quit and just live on purpose.
It's all over then.
Exactly. Like, if that doesn't even work with me, this obviously means that I failed at life, right? Like, is there any potential possibility of another explanation? And all you need is this much willingness and one step, one brave conversation where you say, hey, I made up this story in my head that, you know, when you didn't call me, that meant X, Y, and Z. Or I gave you this opportunity. I thought it was really cool and I thought you would love it. I thought it was what you wanted. And then, like, I feel like you didn't show up. And, you know, I'm making up a bunch of stories about that you don't value me, that you're not grateful, and, like, I love you and I don't want to feel this way. Like, I want to understand what's happening. And if I can go from ruminating and building my fear armor and walls and making up stories and just say the truth, which is, this is hard, I love you and I care for you, or this relationship has value to me, it's worth talking it out.
Yes. Oh, you brought that right back around. Oh, that was smooth.
A little sprinkle. You know, can we talk it out? Can we hash out what is happening? Like, I feel like what I'm thinking and what you're thinking, they're not aligned, but this relationship matters to me. So I don't want you to feel uncomfortable and like you can't tell me if I did something, right? Like, just the same way I don't want to feel uncomfortable telling you that I feel like you did something.
Correct.
Like, it's just a conversation. I don't want to make up stories. And you might find that at the end of that conversation, the relationship actually isn't what you thought it was.
Yes, which we should probably have a part 2 of that, because I think that's it. Like, if we can get, I feel like all of us need to fire ourselves on that narrative part. That's brilliant. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think it's something that we need to work toward. Yeah. But I feel like then there's what's the consequence? People, it prohibits them, like you said earlier, from reaching that next step or taking that next step. And then what happens if the worst case scenario narrative actually is true? Guys, guess what?
I have an answer. I have an answer. You go back to step 1. Accept it. It's what is. You know, like, the acceptance piece doesn't ever change. It is the most annoying part of personal development. Like when you're 20 years into doing this work, what does it always come down to? Acceptance. Every single time. What am I not accepting about the situation? What do I find absolutely unacceptable about this? Yes. It's not agreeing. It's not saying that somebody is right or wrong. It's not acquiescing. It's not giving up. It's saying, this is the circumstance. This is the situation. This is what is. That's all.
I need to work. I have much work to do in that area, because as you were saying that, the first thing I thought is, well, of course I'm acquiescing. No, I'm not. Look, I'm a fighter on this. I know it is an area that I need help with.
It's for all of us, really. I mean, if you think about it, we don't wake up in the morning thinking, how can I blow up and sabotage my personal relationships? Correct. You know, like, that's not our goal for the day. So when we experience the friction, you know, part of acceptance is recognizing, like, for me now, when somebody challenges me, when I feel resistance to something that somebody's pushing, I open up. I start to say, wait, no, give me whatever that is, because that resistance in me is alive and I want to learn from that. I want to know why am I having this resistance? Like, why do I not want to do this event? Why do I not want to go to this place? Why is having this conversation or this particular behavior that somebody wants from me hard for me to get my head around? Like, yes. I start to open up to it, where I think that in the beginning we experience friction or somebody that rubs us the wrong way, and we say, ew, no, I don't want that. I don't accept that. And then we create.
I don't want to accept. I mean, I don't know why anybody would not love Ted and Kendra, but I mean, I have to learn to accept that maybe my spirit rubs somebody else's spirit the wrong way. So, all right, we have to go. That was amazing. As always, I have a lot of work. I say I have a lot of work in this acceptance arena to do for sure. So tell us how they can reach you if they want to learn more, they want to become a client, they want to talk to you about acceptance. What's the best way?
Yeah, you guys can always reach me on Facebook. You can send me a message. You can go to stellarlifecoaching.com. My phone number is there. You can feel free to text or call that number. Yes, and I am about to announce our 2021 retreat in Bali. What? Wow. So keep an eye out for that. That is coming. I'm very, very excited.
Nice. That's amazing.
And that'll be August of next year. So it is going to be a good time.
All right. The one, the only, Kendra Davies, Stellar Life Coaching. Appreciate, love, adore you. You were phenomenal. Thank you for, working on me this week.
Aww. I adore you, Ted. Thanks for having me. Be well, everybody.
Be well, everyone.